Hello, in this video we're going to be using Minitab to perform hypothesis tests, and in order to do that you're going to click on Stat, Basic Stat, and then you would select whichever distribution you need. If you're doing a hypothesis test about a mean, you would use the one sample t. If you're doing it about a proportion, you would select one proportion, and if you're doing it about a standard deviation, you would select one variance. So our first example is going to be about proportion. So we'll select one proportion, and this was one of the examples out of our lecture videos. It was about the antivirus software. So right now the default is always to get data from this worksheet down here, but we're going to put in summarized data, so change that first box to summarized data. Here we're going to select the number of events. This was the number of successes that we had, and in this example it was 380 people had antivirus software out of a total of 400. So the first number is the number of successes, the number of trials is the total number. Make sure that you click the box to perform a hypothesized test, and then here we want to enter in the hypothesized proportion. And the hypothesized proportion was 0.93. And then click on Options. This is where you would go to change your confidence level, and this is different from our alpha. So this is set up for confidence intervals, so 95 would be associated with a 0.05 significance level for confidence. So this is where we want it, because this was an alpha of 0.05, so we would want to leave this at 95. And then we did have a not equal to for our alternative hypothesis, so we'll leave this where it is. And this last thing for proportion, you want to change this to normal approximation, because that's how we did all of our calculations in the textbook. Click OK and click OK again. It tells you what your value of x was, it tells you the value of n, it tells you what the sample proportion was, it gives you a 95% confidence interval, it gives you your test statistic z, and it gives you the p-value. The p-value is greater than our alpha, and so we would fail to reject the null. Next we'll do one about a sample mean. So I want the one sample t. Again, I'm going to do it from summarized data. Enter in the sample size. This was the example about amount of discarded plastic from different households. So the sample size for this was 62. The sample mean was 1.911. The standard deviation was 1.065. And click on hypothesis test, and then enter in your hypothesized mean, which was 1.800. Click on Options. The significance level of this test was 0.05, so we'll leave this at 95. Alternative hypothesis was greater than, so select greater than. We'll click OK and click OK again. So it gives us our value of n, it gives us the mean, the standard deviation, it gives us the lower bound for a 95% confidence interval, and here we have our test statistic and the p-value. And again, because the p-value is large, we would fail to reject the null hypothesis. Next we'll do one about a standard deviation. So go to Stat, Basic Stat, and this time we want variance and one variance. And again, for this example we're going to summarize data. So select Sample Standard Deviation, and you want to enter in the sample size. This was the example about the Pepsi cans. The sample size here was 36. The sample standard deviation was 0.09. Make sure you click on Perform Hypothesis Test, and then the hypothesized standard deviation for this problem was 0.15. click on Options. The significance level again was 0.05, so we'd leave that at 95. Alternative hypothesis for this one was less than, so change this to less than. Click OK, and click OK again, and it gives us our test statistic. It gives us the degrees of freedom, and we have a p-value that at least out to 3 decimal places is 0, and so that tells us that we can reject the null hypothesis. So now let's just open up a set of data. Okay, so I opened up the coins data, and so we will take a look at wheat pennies. This data was about the weights of pennies, and so let's do a test about the mean weight of the pennies. So stat, because I'm going to do mean, I want to take one sample t, and this time I don't want summarized data, I'm going to do it from a sample. And I'm going to do it from the wheat pennies, perform the hypothesis test, and the hypothesis, so let's test to see if the mean weight is greater than 3. So put 3 in there, and then options, we'll do it at the 0.01 level, so I would change that to 99. And we want to see if the mean weight is greater than our hypothesized mean or not. So leave that as greater than. Click on OK and click on OK again. It gives us the mean weight. It gives us the standard deviation. And here we have our test statistic. It's 9.97 and our p-value is 0. And so we would reject the null hypothesis. And so then the null hypothesis would be that the mean weight was equal to 3. The alternative is that the mean weight was greater than 3. And so if we're rejecting the null, so we're rejecting this, which basically means that we're saying yes to this one. And so from this we would say there is sufficient evidence to support our claim that the mean weight of pennies is greater than 3. Okay, so now let's do the other type of test. So you would only do mean or the standard deviation for a sample of data. So click on Stat, Basic Stat, and this time we'll do one about the standard deviation. So select on one variance, and we're going to do it from a sample, and we'll do the wheat pennies again. And we know what our sample standard deviation is because it just gave it to us. And so let's hypothesize that it's less than 0.5. So our hypothesize would be 0.5. Click on Options, and we'll do this again at the 0.01 alpha level, and so we would want to change that to 99. And we want to know if our standard deviation is less than what we're hypothesizing. So click on OK and click on OK again. And here's our test statistics. It's 0.33. The degrees of freedom is 34, and our p-value is 0. So we would reject our null hypothesis. Okay, so that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you're having a great day.